Hey guys, welcome to Hemel Aarde cellar. As is our custom, we're doing our annual low production value release video, straight from the winery, straight from the horse's mouth. So if you see a dog walking around in the background or hear some cellar noises, that's normal. So 23, as a winemaker, there are only so many vintages that you get to work in your life, depending on how old you get and how active you are and how much you want to be involved. 30 or 40 vintages, something like that. So there are only really a handful of fantastic vintages that are going to cross your path, through your winemaking life. I've had a couple that I've loved, like 17 and 19, terrific. I'd say 2023 is right up there. Really is a lovely vintage. For those of you guys that are new to the mailing list or watching a video like this for the first time, maybe go and watch the 2022 video or the 21 video again, and hopefully you can see that I try to be very frank about how I feel about the vintage. I don't like to talk it up. There's the old joke in the wine industry, the Bordeaux winemaker, where every vintage, is the vintage he's just made is the best vintage he's ever had, type of thing. So, as winemakers, there's not a lot we can do about the weather. We can farm to the best of our ability and do everything right in the winery, do the basics carefully and well, but the weather's the weather. 2023, we had really fantastic ripening conditions, especially in the northern areas, Skurfberg, Swartland, even the Bottelary, in the northern Stellenbosch, very, very nice ripening conditions. We did have rain in the ripening season in the southern areas, the cooler areas like the Franschhoek coast, southern Franschhoek, where the Vineyard is, and here on Hemel Aarde, in the Hemel Aarde, there was a lot of rain. And I'll tell you about those wines in a minute. But just the vintage in general, it was a vintage that I enjoyed very, very much. I loved the actual process itself. We had a very, very strong cellar team with Gabriel, my then assistant winemaker. We had Dan and Anna from the States, Michał from Poland, little shout out to you guys, and Jared from Oz, and the old Silver from France. So we had a very, very strong cellar team along with our local guys here. So we could execute the vintage very well. Also, it doesn't happen like this every year, but the ripening sequence just worked out nicely. So logistically, after 2022, we were completely flat. We felt like the vintage happened to us, but in 23, we felt like we happened to the vintage. We really had good control over what was going on. In terms of production, you'll remember I said we had a massive 2022 of like just over 200 tons, because we'd had quite a rainy winter and a rainy spring. But 2023 was a bit more moderate and kind of in the sweet spot. So our cellar, I like to be working between 150, 160 tons, around there. That's kind of an ideal vintage. And this one we did a shade over 170 tons, so that's pretty much in the window of what we can execute very, very well. So I want to run through the wines with you. I might sound like I'm rushing it a little bit, but I'd like to try to keep the video under 10 minutes this year, if at all possible. Be interesting to look back one day at these videos, and see how I got a little bit older every year, and a little bit more forgetful, but I'll try to remember everything as we go along. So the first wine I want to talk about is Here After Here. 2023, I think this is a fantastic value proposition. So we started this label in 2020 as a place for us to catch really, really good young vineyards, like grower vineyards. I've got a buddy in the Polkadry called Donnie Carinas, and we make a wine for him called Polkadry. You should really check that out. And we got access to some of those grapes, and it was just so good, And at the same time, we were planning and planting young vineyards on our own land in the Swartland, and we have grower friends that had terrific young Chenin. And also over the years of finding Cartology vineyards, and there was a period there of about 7 or 8 years where I was constantly on the road looking for interesting vineyards. I ran into vineyards that were not quite in the age bracket that we're looking for Cartology, but showed a lot of promise. So Year After Year, a very useful label for us as sort of a nursery for high potential vineyards that are, you know, between 20 and 30 years old, and the baby stuff. So yeah, you may remember previous vintages were quite pretty, very friendly wines, charming wines. This one, for whatever reason, is a bit different. It's a bit more savory, it's a bit more serious, lovely depth on the palate. I think that'll be a great food wine. I think it'll be fantastic on the table. Well, I don't think you make a mistake taking a few bottles of that. And hopefully it's the type of wine that could find itself onto by the glass lists in good restaurants. It has been doing that over the years. So that's Year After Year. In terms of production of Year After Year, in 2022 we had the opportunity, and the vintage basically gave us that opportunity because it was such a big vintage, to bolster Year After Year with a little bit of old vineyard wine. My problem in 22, if you watch that video again, is that because I thought it was a middling vintage, and I was very open about that, I had to sideline a lot of wine and find another home for it, and it didn't go into any of our labels. 23 was different because I had so much good wine that it was just sort of an embarrassment of riches in terms of options. So that can provide its own temptations as well, to use perfectly good old vineyard wine in Year After Year. So I did take that road, not excessively, but yeah, there is a fair bit of old vineyard wine in here as well. So enjoy that. I think it's a beaut. Okay, sorry if I'm rushing, but I really want to talk about these guys, particularly about Cartology. Obviously these are not 2023 labels. If you've got good eyes, you'll see they're mostly 22s. I've just got them here as props, just to give you something to look at, so you don't have to look at me all the time. 2023 Cartology, I'm thrilled. I'm really, really happy with this wine. It's really a goodie. It's very, very nice. There are a lot of people out there, that have been drinking and collecting Cartology for years, since we started in 2011, and they've got their favorites. I often hear about 2011 and 2012 being perennial favorites. I personally have always loved 17, and I like 19 very much as well. 2020 had just a beautiful palate weight, pretty much a perfect palate weight. I would say this wine, 23, is very similar in palate weight to 2020, the lockdown year. But there's just a little more going on now. So for me, it's certainly one of the best Cartologies we've ever released. The nose is very pretty and very bright. So because of the nature of the vintage, we ended up using a bit more False Bay Coast wine, Ristenhof wine in Cartology. So there's a bit less nautical dawn. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so the wine's got that sort of bright pear, yellow fruit, some citrus, and the palate is just gorgeous. Like, it's very, very well weighted. It's not too big, it's not too small. It just it moves very nicely over the palate. Finishes really long. I'm just stoked. As I said, there's only so many lovely vintages that you'll get to work with as a winemaker, and you really need to enjoy the moment when you do have a good vintage on hand. And this is one of those times where we do have a really lovely vintage to sell. So Cartology 23, there's also a little bit less Semillon in here. There's about 6% this year. Usually we're hovering anywhere between about 8 and 12, sometimes a bit more, percent from the La Colline vineyard. You'll also notice I don't have a Monument Semillon on the table. So from Monument in this vintage, I had from the top section of the vineyard, which usually makes the single vineyard wine, I had a few barrels of outstanding wine. And then I had quite a bit from our main section in the middle of the vineyard of decent wine. But yeah, I felt that I was either going to make like less than 1,000 liters, or just over 1,000 liters of Monument, or use that wine for Cartology. And often when those sort of conversations come up in my mind, if it's 50-50, then I usually opt for Cartology, to keep Cartology very strong. That's very important for me, because it really is the wine that everyone knows about and associates with us, and I want to make sure that it's outstanding. So the Semillon in here is very, very good. everything in here was good. So it's a nice wine. Yeah, enjoy that one. Okay, so we have 4 single vineyard Chenin's this year. We'll talk about the granite wines first, Fire by Night and Nautical Dawn, and then we'll talk about the Skurfberg wines. Fire by Night 2023. Yeah, you don't stand here and sound like an arse, talking up your own wines. And yeah, go and look at the older videos. I don't do this every year, but it's really good. It's really nice. It's it is what I want from Bottelary. The hillsides on our farm. It's quite a high-lying ridge, and there's lots of snowbush, kapokbos on the farm, and the place can be quite fragrant throughout spring. And the wine just catches that loveliness. It's got that like really clean air kind of vibe. The nose has always got that trademark, or what's the right word, kenmerkende, my English, characteristic thatch, sort of a thatch roof note, like a sweet thatch note, green citrus, and it's just so like savor, so pure. The wine really drives on the palate. It's a little bit pithy and very energetic. I'm crazy about this wine. I think it's pretty much spot on for what I want for like fine, very refreshing granite soil wine from the Bottelary. It's quite tight now, a little bit reductive, which is normal for this wine for this age. We've been opening 17s at home, and they are really, in the zone now, however many years later. So it's certainly a wine that you can enjoy in its youth. If you want something very, very cleansing, very, very tight, very intense, drink it young. If you're looking for a little more honey, the wine's going to do that, after 6 or 7 years in bottle. So yeah, enjoy that. I'm really, really stoked with that wine. My baby. We put a lot of effort in with the farming there, a great deal of effort in. It's very, very rewarding to see it pay off. I'm also with the Bottelary, I'm leaning towards using quite a lot of cement in the fermentation, so cement eggs. Along with food and old barrels. I find that I don't know why, it's a big mystery to me why granite soils, particularly the Bottelary, seem to love cement eggs so much, but they just do. It's just trial and error. There must be a reason for it, but I don't know what it is, but it works. So yeah, there's usually the wine's about half from cement eggs, and it really maintains that sort of bright, young crunch in the wine in its first few years. Okay, Nautical Dawn. So the wine, has been amazing for us over the years. We released the first vintage in 2017. Rustenhof is a great site. It's a little granite hillside. The hill's called Sinai. It's farmed by Peter Bredell. And his cousin Bernard, his brand is called Signs of Sinai. I recommend you check them out. Very, very good wines. Lovely wines. And he's also, been quite involved with the farming there over the last few years. So there's a fair bit of TLC gone into the vineyards, but just the natural talent is fantastic. It's decomposed granite, a little hill facing southeast. You're looking back at the hung clip, and on a clear day from the hilltop, you can literally see the waves breaking. It's planted in '78, and it is one of my favorite vineyards. However, as I mentioned in the beginning, we did have a fair bit of rain in the southern areas during the ripening season. So we had some botrytis and some vitrus in the vineyards. So we sort then when we pick in the vineyards, and we also sort again in the cellar. And we ended up with the wines that were, I thought, really, really fantastic. I ended up making less of this wine this year, and it was a similar call to the La Colline situation, where I knew I had very, very nice wine. I wanted to make sure Cartology was outstanding, so I opted to make less Nautical Dawn in this vintage. We've also had a string of extremely good vintages for this wine. I don't think we've had one dud since 2017, so I wanted to make sure that 23 was really nice. So I chose my absolute favorite parts of the 23 and decided to rather populate Cartology with also very, very good stuff, but make sure that this label maintains the level that it's been at. So I'm happy. Very different personality to Fire by Night. Fire by Night is sort of more of a laser beam. It's very, very direct, very straight. This is this is a bit more of a kind of I don't want to use, you know, military terms or anything like that, but it's a bit more of a hand grenade. You know, it's a big explosion of flavor. Yellow fruit. It's quite salty, and it can be very sheer as well. It's got that nice tension between like sweet yellow fruit and a kind of salty saline, like driving acidity. So I'm stoked with that wine. I think it's a very good example of where it's from. So granite and granite, but very different personalities, certainly. Even though that sort of classic bright granite mineral undertow is present in both of the wines, this one is unmistakably Paardeberg and this one is unmistakably Franschhoek. Okay, so moving on to the Skurfberg. This is a bottle of 22, and this is an older bottle of 2014 when we still had this long Magnetic North Mountain Muckstock label on there. It sounded a bit like a law firm. It's quite a long name, so we shortened it to Magnetic North. But that's from my son's birth year, 2014. So I've been holding on to that. That's the only bottle I could find in the cellar. We tend to take our library stock off-site to protect it mostly from me. I do tend to dig into it quite a bit, and then it gets less and less and diminishes significantly. So, you know, library stock shrinkage is a real thing. So I did find this in the winery, so I've got a prop at least. Okay, let's talk about the Skurfberg. Yeah, it's great. It's really good. It was almost a perfect vintage up there, I would say. We got reasonable yields for a change, which is great. We've had some devastatingly low yields up there, as you know. Thinking 2020 and 2021, and we had the disaster in 21 with the tank gasket that messed up Magnetic North. So basically skipped 2 vintages of that wine, which is really not great. But it's back with a bang. Heilkrans 2023, in terms of like absolute quality, there's probably not much in it between these two Skurfberg wines. They've got slightly different personalities. Heilkrans, you know, it's these very large old vines, planted very far apart on deep red sand over red clay with some gravel. The wines tend to be quite structured, this one is, and they tend to have sort of like a rusty mineral undertow, and that might not sound attractive, but it's pretty great in the wines, and they've always got really wonderful acidity. So what we've got with Heilkrans 23 is a top-notch Heilkrans, certainly in the same league as 17 and 19, at least. It's very, very nice. It's a little bit lighter on its feet, so this is tipping the scales at about 13.3 alcohol, with good acidity, and it does have that sort of typical orange blossom, orange rind, orange juice kind of nose, with some sort of soft spices. You know, I don't know how useful specific wine descriptors are, you know, because in the end the tasting experience is quite subjective. But yeah, the wine is quite powerful, but not heavy. It's got very good acidity, it's got terrific flavor, and it really finishes with like a flourish. You know, it's good. Don't know what else to tell you, but it's really a good Heilkrans. And I know that the wine has got a lot of fans, and we've known those people, the Fissers, and now young Philip Mans, who's farming the farm with Joshua for a long time, and we've been through all kinds of things with that family, ups and downs, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to have a wine like this in bottle, you know, and be able to, like, when I go and visit them again, you know, take up a 6-pack and know, you know, I know that they're going to be stoked with what their farm can do. You know, it's an amazing place. Yeah, so that's Odam Farm, Heilkrans. Then my baby's back, Magnetic North 2023. This is, as I said, a bottle of 2014, so the label looks a little bit different. But, you know, the 21 wine that I couldn't release reminds me a bit of this. Yeah, the wine there's just something different about it. I don't know if it's the elevation or the location or the fact that it's really super interesting old DNA. You know, it's this old Massal selection stuff that we don't even know where the original vineyard is, that the cuttings were taken from that Barcy and his dad planted, so the granddad. But it's wonderful DNA, it's very, very good. Barcy passed away last year, And you know, he was just such a legend. He was an amazing character, and some of you might have met him. He was classic Vescus, you know, just a legend of a man. And his son Christian is very bright and very dedicated to farming. He's doing an amazing job with the vineyards. So yeah, couple that with virtually perfect ripening conditions, spot on yields. We were looking at 1.8 tons a hectare for those old vines, which is dead right. The wine is, yeah, I mean, perfect is a strong word, but it's not far off. It's got sort of grapefruit. The nose can be a bit subdued with Magnetic North in the first couple of years. It's got that kind of grapefruit rooibos spectrum nose that it usually has, like a touch of honey. And the palate, it's just different. It's just different to any other Chenin that we work with, and I think it's probably the fact that it's ungrafted. It's got a different personality. There's like a completely different movement on the palate. I don't want to sound ridiculous, but there's almost like an echo. You know, the palate. It's like a different reverberation on the palate. It's totally different. Yeah, so I love the wine. I think it's great. It's got very good acidity. Obviously, that place always does. This year, this is about 40% in cement eggs and the rest in foudre. And yeah, we had 3,000 liters. So small productions. I'll run you through what we have. We had 3,000 liters of that, 4,000 of that, 2,000 of that, 5,000 of that. You know, so these are like really small production wines. I've tried to keep the temptation, obviously, with a wine with a following like that is to really bump the price. But I think I've tried to keep my ego in check and just charge what I think is a fair and right price on the global stage for a wine like this and like this. So that's the end of our single vineyard Chenins. And then we have Hemel Aarde Weingarten 2023. And now for something completely different. It's people might moan about the Hemel Aarde in 23. We actually had a very good experience here. Hans put in a lot of effort with breaking out leaves in the vineyards because we knew that it was going to be a wet season. So we had a lot of airflow, and it is a windy place. So the vines, even after rain events, dried out pretty quickly. And it was quite a nice slow ripening season. It wasn't rushed. So we've ended up with a typical Hemel Aarde wine. The nose is quite exotic. It's got lovely stone fruit and there's a sort of touch of like lime juice and talcum from the green, the muscat that we use, and the Verdelho. It's got that like super exciting exotic nose and that lovely long tapered finish that this wine can have because of the acidity. But there is something that sets the 23 vintage apart from all previous Hemel Aardes. There's always some botrytis in the Hemel Aarde wine because of the location. In 2023, with that, constant rain event, wind drying, rain event, wind drying, we developed like beautiful dry botrytis, especially in the Chenin and a little bit in the Chardonnay, a few weeks before picking. And at one stage, I was pretty tempted to pick it separately and make something like a sweet wine, but pressing that tiny amount of grapes and getting a couple of liters of a sweet wine once off didn't make that much sense to me. So in the end, I decided to stick to my rule of whatever grows in the vineyard goes into the wine. And Hemel Aarde's always been like that. That's why the vintages change. And sometimes the Roussanne is dominant, sometimes the Chardonnay is dominant, with the Chenin and Verdelho playing support roles. So I took that approach. I spent a lot of time walking in the vineyard. Decided that the botrytis was very healthy. It was not sour. Tasted amazing. So we picked it and pressed it all together. So on top of that relatively exotic Hemel Aarde nose, you've also got the classic that like dried orange skin and apricot thing that you get from botrytized wines, and also the palate's quite full. So it's lovely. I had a good friend here from the UK, Richard Kelly, he's a MW and a guy that's been buying our wines for many years, and he said it reminds him of, I won't talk about the region, but he said it reminds him of certain, powerful dry European whites that have a slight botrytis effect. So I think it's super interesting and very, very good. And again, like year after year, I think this will be amazing as a food wine. Yeah, especially with strongly flavored foods or spicy foods. I think it'll be amazing. Okay, I think that sums up the wines, guys. Enjoy your shopping. You know, I just like to close off and say thank you. You know, I know that that there are lots of other fantastic wineries out there that are doing wonderful things, and that we have great admiration for, and that you can support them, and you should support them. You know, I think we need to try to buy local as much as we can. But I just want to thank you for your support of our project. You know, there's an enormous amount of effort and work and quality control and detail that goes into the business. You know, and despite the fact that we've had amazing feedback from you over the years, I'm always a little nervous to send you a new vintage. So I really hope you enjoy these. Cheers.